A young girl with purple hair is horrified to hear her mother-in-law refer to her as a toy for her 10-year-old son. She has become Cherry Mail, a character in the novel The Villainess Has a Craze for Money, and sister to the female lead. Unlike her sister, who possessed divine power, the sickly Cherry was considered a worthless burden to her family. When she turned 10, Cherry's family sold her to a ducal house for a very low price. The narration questions the female leads in action, prompting a look at the novel's title for answers. With the title revealed to be about a money-crazed villainess, the story questions why a saint would be the female lead. The reason is revealed with a menacing glare. The female lead's personality is garbage. The female lead didn't care about her sister being sold, only concerned with her own survival and wealth. The recollection ends, leaving Cherry dejected, realizing she is unloved by her family and her new mother-in-law. Facing a large set of doors, Cherry internally pleads with the person inside not to be foolish enough to accept her. She tentatively starts to speak about the marriage, only to be surprised by the sight of a small white-haired boy. This boy is Kybran, the novel's villain, who was imprisoned for having snake scales. She was meant to be his plaything. Cherry recalls Kybran's terrible future, where he grows up to become a blood-soaked, crazed killer. Despite his dark destiny, she can't help but think the young Kybran is incredibly cute. Kybran shyly approaches Cherry and her suitcase, asking if he can hold it for her. Overjoyed, he hugs the suitcase tightly and promises to cherish it. The two children sit together, sharing a quiet meal in the grand dining hall. While looking at his food, Kybran asks if he needs to be taller, admitting he likes that Cherry is bigger than him. Watching Kybran sleep while holding her hand, Cherry wonders if she can raise him well enough to avoid his fate as a killer. She steals her resolve, determined to get them both out of this prison and rewrite the novel's ending. Outdoors, Kybran happily tells someone he likes his mother, Jo, and Cherry too. A weeping Jo stands in the rain, declaring that Cherry cannot get close to her child because she could hurt him. The white-haired Duke looks down with sorrow, admitting that though it's hard to gamble on a child, it doesn't make them bad parents. Looking back with determination, Cherry realizes there must be a secret hidden within the ducal family. Jo coldly tells Cherry that she is not permitted to walk around the house without permission. In contrast, the Duke smiles warmly, telling Cherry to address him casually, like a family member. A kind brown-haired maid takes Cherry's hand, promising to protect her and assuring her that everything is fine. Surrounded by flowers, a blushing Cherry admits to herself that she likes both the Duke and his mother. Pictured with her new family, Cherry wonders if she can uncover their secret and raise Kybran to be a good person. An ethereal, glowing woman repeats the cruel words about providing her son a wife to play with until he tires of her. The purple-haired girl looks up, realizing with shock that her new mother-in-law's callous words were about her. She is horrified that anyone would say such a thing to their own 10-year-old child. She understands this is how the original story was messed up. The child was given a wife instead of toys. The narration explains she has become Miria, the younger sister of the heroine in the novel. A glowing silhouette appears as her true name in this world is revealed, Sharia Mail. The story contrasts the heroine Maria, who possessed divine power, with the frail and burdensome Caria. On the same day Maria entered the temple as a saintess, Charia's parents sold her to a ducal household. At the ducal estate, she learns her family is urgently demanding the money for her, and they must proceed. A woman with white blonde hair gives a cold, backward glance, hoping taking in Sharia isn't a foolish mistake. Sharia slumps to the floor, small and defeated before a massive, ornate door. She sighs, lamenting her terrible luck with both her biological parents and now her in-laws. "Erg!" she screams in frustration, wishing she had possessed this body sooner so she could have fought back. A sharp sound echoes through the air. A painful memory flashes, someone grabbing her by the collar, demanding to know if this is a dream. She feels hopeless, knowing that resisting won't change her fate of being sold into a snake's den. An image of a blonde girl with a cruel smile flashes in her mind as she grips Sharia's chin. The memory reveals her sister for what she is, a money-crazed villainess, pleased that her useless sister finally has monetary value. Coming to her senses, Sharia timidly tries to get someone's attention. Kneeling on the floor before a man, Sharia timidly apologizes. Her gaze falls upon a small, white-haired boy with golden eyes who looks down shyly. In a flash of recognition, she understands who this child is. She recalls a vision of his future, a deranged, psychopathic villain who drenches the world in blood. The story reveals that because of snake scales on his body, Kybran was branded a monster and confined to a remote mansion. Driven mad by vengeance, he eventually murdered his entire ducal family, including Sharia, his wife. Sitting on her suitcase, Sharia despairs over her fate, trapped with a trashy sister and a husband destined to be a killer. But as she looks at the teary-eyed young Kybran, she thinks to herself that it's all right. A warm, bright smile spreads across her face as she stands to properly greet the boy. She imagines telling him that without this arrangement, she might have been homeless, a concept he struggles to grasp. Seeing his adorable, concerned face, Sharia is moved. She decides that since they were both unlucky with parents, they should try to get along. She smiles, realizing with a sense of wonder that she now has the power to decide the characters' fates. She begins to speak hesitantly, her voice barely a whisper. Kybrin shyly approaches her suitcase and asks if he can carry it for her. She agrees, deciding to leave it in his care. Overjoyed, Kybrin hugs the suitcase tightly, promising to treasure it with a radiant smile. As he runs ahead, Chiriya notes his kind heart, while also worrying his long bangs will make him trip. But he insists he can see just fine. He leads her through the grand mansion until they arrive at their destination. Chiriya is taken aback by the sheer size of the opulent room. She quickly realizes it feels more like a prison than a child's room, noting that the windows are sealed shut. A horrifying thought crosses her mind. They plan to lock him in here until he's an adult. Spotting the pristine bed, she asks Kybrin if the blankets are changed, only for him to nervously reveal that no one ever enters the room. Stunned by his answer, she can only ask, "What?" Confused by the bed's cleanliness, she presses further, and Kybrin admits that he doesn't sleep in it. He points to a bundle of cloth in a dark corner of the room. Appalled, Chiriya demands to know why he wouldn't use the bed, warning that he'll catch a cold sleeping on the floor. With tears welling in his golden eyes, Kybrin quietly admits that the bed is too big. Turning to him with resolve, she declares that from now on, he can sleep with her. Kybrin is stunned by her offer, stammering in disbelief. She explains that his family, they should look after each other, and one day he can help her in return. Her smile is warm and reassuring, full of genuine kindness. She gently urges the hesitant Kybrin to join her. A deep blush spreads across Kybrin's face as he looks at her. He carefully climbs onto the large bed where she is waiting. She asks if he feels less scared now that they're together, and he shyly agrees. He then nervously asks how he should address her, and she finds his shyness adorable. Facing him, she happily introduces herself as Chiriya. Her full name echoes through her thoughts, Chiriya Mayal. Chiriya looks at him with a gentle smile and happily responds. Her new mission is clear in her mind. Her goal is to raise Kybrin well. The scene transitions, showing a sunlit garden of beautiful roses. A sprawling and magnificent ducal estate stands under a clear sky. The next morning, Kybrin wakes with a look of confusion. He sees Chiriya sitting beside him, laughing with pure, unadulterated joy. Later, Chiriya struggles to reach a basket on a high shelf, crying out in frustration that she can't get to it. She fumes, wondering what kind of mansion has no cook and stores food so high up. As Kybrin nervously warns her to be careful, she internally complains that this mistreatment is unacceptable to someone from modern Korea. She lets out a tired sigh, wondering how they're going to eat today if she can't get the food down. Chiriya spots a long wooden stick on the floor and gets an idea. With a flash of inspiration, she exclaims that she's figured it out. Holding the stick, she turns to Kybrin and asks him to catch the basket she's about to knock down. She hands him a large cloth to catch with, warning him to be careful, and he nervously agrees. Working together, Chiriya takes aim with the stick while Kybrin waits below with the cloth held open. Their plan works perfectly as an apple and carrot fall from the basket. Kybrin excitedly shouts that he got it. Chiriya takes inventory of their haul, listing off apples, potatoes, sugar, and carrots. She suggests they can make a stew with some meat and cheerfully declares she'll cook for him. At a wooden table with a large knife, Chiriya prepares to cook as Kybrin watches on. She frowns with concern, realizing the kitchen knife is far too big for her to handle safely. Kybrin nervously volunteers to cook instead, but when Chiriya asks if he has experience, he admits he doesn't. Amused, Chiriya realizes he must have seen through her lack of cooking skills, recalling that her only recipe in her past life was to call her mom. She agrees to let him try, cautioning him to be careful with the knife. Looking at the neatly prepared potato, she praises his skill, admitting he's already better than she is. As Kybrin calls her name in surprise, she giggles while hiding her face. Seeing him stammer, Chiriya quickly reassures him that she didn't mean to pry. Kybrin looks down with a pained expression, explaining he didn't want to show her because he thought she'd find it disgusting. Reading his distress, Chiriya decides it's best not to press him any further on the matter. She takes her first bite of the stew he prepared. Kybrin beams with joy, exclaiming that it's delicious, which makes Chiriya wonder just how terrible his food was before this. The two children sit together at a grand table, happily eating their meal. Kybrin continues to eat with his cheeks puffed out. As she watches him, Chiriya recalls how he kept rubbing the scales on his body while he slept. She finds herself blurting out that he's cute, then seems surprised by her own words. Gently patting his head, she tells him he's cute and encourages him to eat well. Later, Chiriya sits at a large desk, pondering over a list she's making. She tries to remember what she needs, recalling a ladder and something else. As Kybrin watches silently, Chiriya complains about the absurdity of having to change into her clothes without any maids to help. Her suspicions are confirmed with a grimace. A quick check reveals that even the study's windows are locked from the outside. The view of the barred windows reinforces her belief that this grand mansion is just a fancy prison, depriving a growing child of sunlight. Interrupted by a sudden noise, Chiriya looks up from behind the desk, asking what it was. Kybrin panics explaining that the bell means people are coming soon. With a sudden, intense focus, she realizes they need to hide immediately. She urges the hesitant Kybran to come with her. Grabbing his hand, she pulls him along with a determined shout, leading the way. From their hiding spot, they watch 3 maids pass by, one of whom complains that the place gives her the creeps. Chiria overhears 2 maids gossiping about the new dresses the Duchess sent, with one suggesting they could steal some gems without being noticed. Annoyed by their audacity, Chiria clenches her fist, silently fuming about those brats. Seeing an opportunity, she turns to Kybran and suggests they use the distraction to go outside. Kybran hesitates, but she presses on, asking if he isn't the least bit curious about the world outside. She softens, realizing he must have been forbidden from leaving thousands of times. With a bright, reassuring smile, she extends her hand, inviting him to come with her. She takes his hand firmly in hers, praising him for his courage. With renewed determination, she pulls him forward, telling him to trust her. The 2 children peek cautiously from behind a doorway, checking if the coast is clear. Having confirmed the maids' routes, Chiria spots an opening and prepares to lead them out. Just outside the mansion, a serious-looking young knight with brown hair stands beside a carriage. The knight glances back at the estate, thinking to himself that the carriage must be new. Turning to Kybran with a heart-shaped smile, Chiria cheerfully urges him forward. Their escape is cut short as the brown-haired knight suddenly appears, blocking their path. He sternly informs Chiria and Kybran that they are forbidden from being outside and must return immediately. Sizing him up, Chiria internally notes his stiff posture and correctly deduces that he's just a rookie. The young knight stands formally, his expression unwavering and serious. Chiria calmly hands the knight her list and asks him to get the items, but he questions why she didn't simply ask the maids. She claims the maids were untrustworthy thieves, but the knight dismisses her accusation, stating they were personally chosen by the Duchess. With a sudden, intense glare, Chiria challenges the knight, asking if he is calling her a liar. Flustered, the knight decides he must confirm her story and asks them to wait while he investigates, which she coolly accepts. Kybran and Chiria stand together, quietly watching the knight walk away. A view of the magnificent estate is shown, which is ominously referred to as the Snake's Den. A flashback reveals that Kybran was born with serpent-like scales and a strange, glowing sigil on his back. His father, the Duke, had the mark investigated and discovered it was an incredibly sophisticated sealing spell. Because such a spell was impossible to cast on an unborn child, rumors spread that he was a monster sealed by the gods. Tragically, his own parents believed the rumors and imprisoned their son in the mansion. A heartbreaking memory shows young Kybran on his knees, watching his parents turn their backs and abandon him. Back in the present, Chiria watches Kybran and sadly realizes this might be his first time outside since being locked away. She encourages him to enjoy his freedom while he can, musing that anyone else in his position would have tried to escape. Blushing shyly, Kybran admits he's already finished looking around, which surprises her. He stammers that the flowers are beautiful and the sky is incredibly bright, marveling at the simple wonders. He then turns to Chiria amidst the beautiful flowers and sincerely tells her that she is far prettier. A radiant, blushing smile spreads across his face as he looks at her, his golden eyes shining. Completely caught off guard by the compliment, Chiria is flustered and struggles to find the right words. Her surprise gives way to pure joy, and she bursts into a bright, teary-eyed laugh. Their peaceful moment is shattered by a maid's panicked screams as she swears she didn't do it. The maid is on the ground, desperately pleading her innocence to an unseen accuser. The brown-haired knight stands over her, revealing that the jewels missing from Chiria's dress were found in her belongings. He declares that the Duchess will be informed and that the maid will be punished for her crime. As the maid clasps her hands in a show of despair, Chiria cynically thinks to herself what a good actress she is. Her eyes are suddenly drawn to a distinctive golden embroidery on the maid's uniform. The knight recognizes the temple's crest on the maid, and after apologizing for the scene, he instructs the children to head back inside. As they walk away, Chiria asks about the incident, and Kybran explains that people from the temple are always like this. He reveals that they intentionally stir up trouble just to torment his mother, the Duchess. Chiria recalls from the original story that the temple's pressure played a huge role in Kybran's tragic fate, not just his parents' neglect. She remembers that the novel ended abruptly, but she knows for certain that Kybran was never meant to have a happy ending. While he suffered, her sister, the heroine, and the temple only grew more powerful and influential. Overwhelmed by anxiety, she worries that by getting involved, she has already doomed herself. Noticing her distress, a concerned Kybran gently asks her what's wrong. Pushing aside her dark thoughts, she reaches out and gives him a comforting pat on the head. With a cheerful smile, she tells the startled Kybran that since they're husband and wife, he can tell her anything. She looks at him with renewed determination, deciding her mission is to raise Kybran to be a good person. If she can do that, she hopes, maybe he'll grow into someone kinder as he blushes under her gentle touch. Night falls, and inside the vast, lonely room, Kybran sleeps alone in the large bed. A soft rustle is heard as Chiria stands by the sealed window, her back to the room. She holds a collection of sparkling gems in her lace-gloved hands, diamonds, and colorful magic stones. With a grimly satisfied expression, she thinks that the maid's theft actually saved her the trouble of getting the gems herself. A small character thanks the reader and directs them to the website. A promotional banner encourages readers to visit the website for more content. She identifies the treasures: diamonds the maids tore from her clothes, and a magic stone she pried from a kitchen lantern. Believing the stones are the key to their escape, she stares at the window and recalls information about magic from the novel. An explanation from the story reveals that artificial blue magic stones are vulnerable to diamonds, causing a small explosion when shattered. Staring at the terrace, Sharia recalls her plan to break the window and use a rope to escape. She clarifies to herself that she isn't escaping immediately. Her first priority is to secure an escape route and then wait for an opportunity. She feels relieved that maids rarely enter Kybran's room, but worries if her lace gloves will be enough protection from the blast. With a deep sigh, she tells herself to calm down, clutching the gems tightly in her gloved hands. Gazing at the barred window, she steels her resolve, knowing she can't raise Kybran in a prison like this. With a brilliant flash, she smashes the magic stone with a diamond, triggering the explosion. A flashback shows a younger Kybran being told by an adult that the outside world is too dangerous for him. The young Kybran looks up silently at a woman beside him. The woman, his mother, reassures him that she will find a solution. In another painful memory, his parents turn their backs on him as his father coldly calls him a nuisance. Alone in a vast room, a small Kybran sits on the floor, clutching a hand mirror. His eyes well up with tears as he holds the mirror, his reflection a picture of sorrow. The memory ends with a decree that the young lord must be isolated, showing a small girl standing before a sealed, thorny gate. A shadowy figure of the Duke stands over the kneeling Duchess as she pleads for them to wait just a little longer. Back in the present, a startled Kybran is jolted awake by the noise. A maid sitting by the bed asks if Taria is okay, while Kybran, now awake, realizes what has happened and asks if the young lord is awake. With a bright, teary smile, Taria turns to the broken window, celebrating her success. She apologizes for waking him, revealing her hands are cut and bloodied from shattering the glass. Kybran stares in shocked silence, his eyes wide with concern. Taria explains what she was doing while Kybran stammers, asking what happened. Beaming proudly, she points to the shattered window, announcing that she broke it open for him. She explains that he can now breathe the outside air and even unlock the window from the outside. As she asks why he doesn't look happy, he walks toward her, his expression unreadable. Kybran gently takes her injured hand, looking at it with concern. She tries to brush it off, smiling as she insists it doesn't hurt much and that she can treat it herself. He quietly asks if he can take a look, and she agrees. He holds her bloody, lace-gloved hands in his. The two children kneel opposite each other as he gently holds her injured hands under the moonlight. A golden light emanates from his hands as he holds hers, causing the wounds to glow and heal. Much to Taria's shock, staring at her hand, she realizes in disbelief that the wound is closing. As scales begin spreading across his face, Taria becomes alarmed, thinking he's in pain. She urges him to stop, but he insists that he's fine. Her hands are completely healed, glowing with a faint golden light. Completely stunned, Taria realizes Kybran has healing powers, something that never happened in the original story. She recalls that healing is something even magic struggles with, which is why her sister, the Saint, is so revered. A radiant image of her blonde-haired sister, the heroine Muria, appears, surrounded by a holy light. In a cute chibi reenactment, Kybran proudly shows his healed hand, while Taria nervously insists it's fine, since it doesn't hurt. Sitting together, she hesitantly asks him how he got injured in the first place. Kybran stammers that he got hurt because he's a monster, leaving Taria speechless and annoyed. Taria firmly denies he's a monster, pointing out that he's getting along with her, but he calls her strange for it. He then asks if she's getting along with him because she's a monster too, which leaves her completely bewildered. A blushing and flustered Kybran looks away, unable to meet her gaze. Taria nervously agrees that it might be possible, causing Kybran to light up with a joyful, "I knew it!" As Taria calls his name, she thinks to herself that he seems to like the idea more than she expected, but decides it's fine. Suddenly feeling happy, Kybran apologizes and says he'll go back to sleep, quickly scurrying away. Taria watches him go, thinking to herself that something feels strange. As Kybran sleeps, she reflects on his newfound healing ability and his lack of animosity towards the Duchess, realizing there's too much information missing from the original story. Looking down at the sleeping Kybran, she wonders if he has another backstory that wasn't in the novel. The scene transitions to the next day, showing the Grand Ducal estate. The Duchess, Jo, stands with an imposing and stern presence, her arms crossed as she appears before them. A flustered Taria stands alone, lost in thought. The Duchess coldly instructs a maid to discard all the dresses she had sent before, as Taria looks on. Turning to Charia, the Duchess asks for her opinion on the current dress, leaving Charia momentarily confused. The Duchess clarifies her question, asking if Taria is capable of putting the dress on by herself. With a strained smile, Taria wonders why the Duchess is doing this but politely accepts, saying the dress is fine. Suddenly, Kybran runs through the open doors, desperately calling for his mother. Thump! He loses his footing and tumbles forward in a dramatic fall. The Duchess screams Kybran's name in terror while a shocked Sharia looks on. A close-up shows the Duchess clutching her chest, her expression a mask of silent anguish. Sharia rushes to Kybran's side to check on him as he insists he's fine, while the Duchess watches with a dark, troubled expression. Sharia quietly observes them, puzzled by the Duchess's intense, fearful reaction to Kybran's fall. Having composed herself, the Duchess announces that it's time for her to leave. Thinking she must confirm something for herself, Sharia grabs the Duchess's dress to stop her from leaving. With a bright, hopeful smile, Sharia calls out, "Mother," catching the Duchess off guard. The Duchess turns back, her expression one of pure shock, as she questions what Sharia just called her. A maid interrupts, advising the Duchess not to stay too long, prompting the Duchess to demand what the servant just said. Sharia glares at the maid, annoyed that a servant would dare to control the Duchess's actions. Remembering the maids from the temple, Sharia wonders if they're connected, as the Duchess tells her to be quiet and reminds her that she's only here due to the slightest chance. The Duchess takes a slow, deliberate sip from her teacup. A chibi memory shows the Duchess finding the tea disgusting, only for a maid to explain Kybran made it, and that healthy things are often bitter. Sharia concludes that the Duchess is completely different from the woman she knew at the beginning. Her thoughts drift to a memory of reaching for a divine, glowing figure with long blue hair. The glowing, ethereal woman from her memory offers a gentle, reassuring smile. The maid insists the Duchess's presence will negatively affect the young master, leading Sharia to realize the temple maids are actively trying to separate them. The Duchess takes another quiet sip of tea, her face unreadable. Setting her cup down decisively, the Duchess states that she must leave now. A spectral image of the Duchess warns Sharia to keep her mind sharp to survive, while a small chibi Sharia reminds herself to keep reading the story. The Duchess's voice echoes a final warning that Sharia has no allies in this place, but Sharia looks on with resolve. In a cute chibi scene, Kybran hugs Sharia from behind as she cheerfully promises to remember her mother's advice, much to the Duchess's annoyance. The Duchess turns and walks away, flanked by her two maids, exiting through the grand doors. Kybran shyly promises Sharia that he'll be on her side, and she accepts with a grateful smile. Sharia asks Kybran to confirm that the Duchess will visit from now on, and he happily agrees. Seeing Kybran's joyful expression, Sharia asks if he likes meeting with the Duchess, to which he blushes and shyly admits he does. Kybran quickly stammers that he likes Lady Sharia too, which makes her laugh at his adorable assumption that she was jealous. Sharia's expression grows serious as she reflects on how different the current events are from the original novel. A maid with curly green hair and glasses arrives to inform them that the lady will not be visiting today. Standing protectively in front of Kybran, Sharia demands to know why. The maid explains that because the Duchess ignored the temple's generosity, they must now perform purification work, which Sharia internally identifies as a threat. When Sharia presses for the reason behind the purification, the green-haired maid hesitates to answer. Kybran whispers that the places he has been are considered contaminated, so they must be purified regularly. The green-haired maid glares menacingly at Kybran, beginning a threat about what will happen if he truly cares for the Duchess. Slap. Sharia strikes the maid's hand away from Kybran, with fierce protectiveness. Sharia confronts the maid, who scoffs that she's acting like the little mistress and suggests being the Saintess's sister isn't enough for her. As the maid accuses Sharia of looking bad for relying on the temple, Sharia tells her to shut up and stop pretending, pulling Kybran behind her. A narrator muses on whether the Saintess's sister is truly special, confirming she is, because in the original story, Sharia had an innate rejection of divine power. Realizing she feels no divine power from the maid, Sharia dismisses her as nothing, leaving the maid sputtering in enraged disbelief. Sharia turns away from the fuming maid, holding Kybran's hand, and thinks that based on everything she's witnessed, she can finally make a guess. She concludes that the temple is manipulating Kybran to control the Duke's family, and recalls that they were the ones who first branded him a monster. Decisively, Sharia tells Kybran it's time to go and leads him away from the scene. As they walk down the hall together, Sharia reflects that the original story never mentioned the temple, actively sending people to drive a wedge between Kybran and the Duchess. Flustered, Sharia insists she doesn't know either, while Kybran looks at her inquisitively. With a silent nod, Sharia's expression shifts to one of quiet determination. She thinks that for Kybran to thrive, they must leave, but worries that two children can't outrun the temple or expose its corruption without evidence. Sharia directly asks a surprised Kybran if he wants to leave the mansion, leaving him to stammer in response. A brilliant idea strikes Sharia, and she smiles with radiant confidence, having formulated a plan. Night falls over the grand ducal estate, setting the stage for their escape. Standing alone in the quiet mansion, Sharia confirms that everyone is gone and all their escape routes are secure. She lays out her plan. While they're asleep, a mysterious fire will start in the first-floor kitchen. They will then awaken to the inexplicable smoke and flames, giving them a perfect excuse to escape from their second-floor bedroom window. Sharia beams with self-satisfaction, clearly proud of her seemingly flawless plan. Her confidence wavers as she realizes there's a significant problem she overlooked. The problem, she realizes with dread, is that their alibi requires them to jump from the second floor. Just as she worries about the plan, Kybran quietly appears behind her, calling her name and startling her. Now dressed in a white nightshirt, a nervous Kybran holds a thick rope and confirms he's ready. He reports that he set up the marbles and diamonds to collide when the rope is pulled, earning a good job from Sharia. Together, Sharia and Kybran stand ready, holding the rope with determined expressions. With a mighty swing, Sharia smashes the end of the rope against a large window. The impact triggers a series of bright, fiery explosions, shattering the glass. Outside, the window erupts in flames, illuminating the night. The two children stand before the fiery, open path, their escape route now clear. Pleased with the result, Sharia announces she'll go down the rope first. She tells Kybran she'll catch him with a blanket, and to be careful, as he watches with a firm expression. Sharia takes a firm grip on the thick rope, preparing for the descent. With a determined look, she begins to climb down the rope through the smoke and embers. From outside, she looks small against the high wall, realizing the second floor is higher than she expected. She mentally coaches herself to stay calm and get as close to the ground as possible before letting go. Her hands slip, and with a panicked cry, she loses her grip on the rope. Whoosh! Sharia plummets towards the ground below. She lands softly and safely in the center of a large, waiting blanket. Thud! She stares in shock as Kybran lands perfectly beside her, wondering how her body seemed to float for a second. Utterly bewildered, Sharia wonders how he landed so skillfully, while Kybran looks back at her, equally confused. Brushing it off, Sharia muses that villains must just be extraordinary, even from a young age. A sudden downpour begins, and Sharia looks up as the rain starts to fall. They watch the mansion burn in the rain, with Sharia noting that luckily, it's raining now. After Sharia speaks, a shocked Kybran turns to her and asks, "Divorce, you say?" Kybran looks down worriedly, wondering if they'll be charged for the repair fees. He shakes his head in denial as a carriage clatters to a halt nearby. The blonde-haired Duchess bursts from the carriage, screaming Kybran's name as a maid follows behind her. A man holds the Duchess back as she screams for him to let her go, desperately trying to reach her son. Sharia puts a reassuring arm around the stunned Kybran, telling him she's fine and urging him to go to his mother. As the Duchess runs toward them, Sharia watches her approach before turning away. Sensing a new presence, Sharia looks up in surprise. A tall, dark-haired man with piercing golden eyes appears, holding an umbrella over her in the rain. The man asks if she's injured, and as she denies it, she notices the faint smell of tobacco. Her gaze drifts to the man's right arm, sensing something unusual about it. A portrait introduces Menelik Nectarian, Kybran's biological father, the youngest sword master and de facto ruler of a buried city. The story recalls Menelik's past, noting that he never took a prominent role and would have surpassed everyone if he hadn't lost his right arm. Menelik shows his prosthetic arm, explaining its condition to someone off-panel. Eek! He suddenly scoops Sharia into his arms, startling her as he shelters them both from the rain. Sharia frantically apologizes while in his arms, but he calmly tells her it's fine, as she thankfully woke him up. Held in the arms of a white-haired man, Sharia thinks with surprise that he isn't angry, resolving to keep her distance. Kybran, with tears in his eyes, tells Sharia it's his fault he might hurt her, but insists that he is okay. Still in the white-haired man's arms, Sharia demands to be put down, to which he responds with a curious, As the man carries her, a determined Sharia announces that she will sleep with the young master. Now on the ground, Sharia holds an umbrella over a kneeling Kybran, warning him that he will catch a cold. She gently tells Kybran that he doesn't have to pretend to be okay for her. With a radiant smile, Sharia puts a comforting arm around Kybran as they sit together under the umbrella. In a cute chibi moment, she tells a blushing Kybran to just assume she's sturdy and lean on her. Overcome with emotion, Kybran lets a tear fall as he rests his head on her shoulder. The grand mansion is shown engulfed in roaring flames against the dark sky. A chibi version of Sharia, dressed as a witch, points to a text bubble, while the real Sharia and the man stand under an umbrella in the background. The white-haired man, holding the umbrella, remarks that it is winter and time for them to go back. The blonde-haired Duchess appears, looking tearful and confused, as she questions the name Winter. A startled Sharia looks up at the Duchess, instinctively calling her Mother. The Duchess sternly tells her not to use that title, prompting Sharia to ask why she isn't questioning the fire and their escape. With a sigh, the Duchess coldly reminds Sharia that she was bought and they are not equals, dismissing her questions for later. Inside a carriage, the white-haired man sits across from Sharia and Kybran. Sharia gazes out the carriage window, watching the burning ducal estate fade into the distance. The man explains that Winter, the Duchess, is traveling separately because the temple warned her presence would worsen Kybran's condition. He clenches his fist, speculating that since the temple always looked down on them, It could all be a lie. He grapples with his lingering doubts, admitting it's hard to gamble with his own child's life on the chance the temple was telling the truth. Listening silently, Chiriya reflects that their difficult situation doesn't make them good parents. She admits to herself that she can't figure out the Duke, as an image of the white-haired man relaxing appears. Realizing the characters are more complex than in the novel, she watches as their carriage speeds away. Looking out the window, Chiriya announces that they are almost at their destination. Her eyes widen in awe as she gets her first glimpse of a massive, brilliantly lit mansion. The carriage arrives before the grand entrance of the palatial new estate. As servants unload crates, the Duke informs the children that they will be leaving the capital as soon as possible. He explains to a confused Chiriya that by taking Qyburn from the estate, they have broken their contract with the temple. He reveals the terms of the contract. The temple would help with Qyburn's treatment only if he remained confined and they stayed in the capital under watch. The Duke adds that the temple wanted to send a tribute to determine if Qyburn was truly a monster. The horrifying truth dawns on Chiriya. She was sent not as a toy, but as a tribute. Feeling betrayed by the novel's author, Chiriya asks the Duke why he is revealing all of this to her now. The Duke dismisses her question, saying she wouldn't understand, as she internally scoffs at being treated like a child. A small, chibi Chiriya appears with a promotional bubble, while below, the Duke leads the children toward their carriage. The Duke places a hand on Qyburn's head, which emits a soft, glowing light. Chiriya offers to dry the Duke, calling him Your Grace, and silently notes the tension between him and his son. The carriage stands ready as the Duke and Chiriya wait before the entrance of the new residence. As the Duchess arrives, the Duke instructs a maid named Mara to take Chiriya inside to wash up. Chiriya watches as the Duke and Duchess speak, agreeing it's for the best, since the Pope wouldn't have sent the Saintess to them anyway. She thinks with wide-eyed shock that her sister's personality would have made her refuse to come regardless. A radiant vision of the Saintess Miria appears, with the Duke shown kneeling in reverence before her image. As Mara leads her away, Chiriya muses that Holy Power might not have recognized Qyburn's scales as a disease in the first place. Entering a beautiful room, she recalls that the adult Qyburn in the original story was described as being scale-free. She puzzles over how his scales could have disappeared without her sister's holy power. Clang! From a balcony above, the maid Mara smiles down warmly at Chiriya. Mara apologizes for not being there sooner, explaining that maids not affiliated with the temple were forbidden at the old estate, which surprises Chiriya. Chiriya is touched by Mara's sincere worry, realizing the maid must know that she was sold to the family. Overwhelmed, Chiriya mentally spirals about her potential crimes as an arsonist and sister to the absent Saintess, while Mara praises her for staying by Qyburn's side. Mara beams with a kind smile, promising Chiriya that from now on she will stay by her side. Overwhelmed with emotion, Chiriya listens as Mara encourages her to eat well and regain her strength. Mara explains that Chiriya will sleep with Qyburn tonight, but will have her own room starting tomorrow. With a cheerful smile, Mara promises to bring them cocoa soon. As Chiriya waves goodbye to the departing maid, an overjoyed Qyburn calls out her name. Qyburn beams with pure, sparkling delight, his fists clenched in excitement. He excitedly tells Chiriya his mother said he doesn't have to go back anymore, and asks if she can do anything, leaving her confused. A close-up reveals Qyburn's unique golden eyes, shining with hope and excitement. He internally marvels at Chiriya setting a fire just to come home, a thought that completely baffles her. As they stand together, Chiriya grows thoughtful, wondering why no one is questioning the fire at the estate. She continues to ponder the strange silence surrounding the fire, reasoning that even a cover-up would still raise questions. Lost in thought, she questions if she's truly blameless when Qyburn calls her name, breaking her reverie. Qyburn energetically protests that he isn't sleepy at all, while an exhausted Chiriya internally laments her own fatigue. Tucked into a large bed together under the moonlight, Chiriya decides to tell Qyburn a story. She begins a bedtime story about a worker ant as Qyburn listens with wide-eyed curiosity. Her story describes the ant's grueling work schedule, which only seems to confuse Qyburn. The tale grows darker as she recounts the ant's exploitation, muttering how she was treated like a joke. Looking distressed, she finishes the grim story by hoping the worker ant finds happiness in its next life, which worries Qyburn. Drifting into sleep, Chiriya's face is serene as her story concludes. In a dreamlike state, she recalls her past life, remembering who she was before she became Chiriya. Her peaceful memory is shattered by a sudden, startling thought. Wait, as Qyburn appears to float out the window with her in his arms, she struggles to recall her original name. The next morning, Chiriya wakes in a sunlit room, feeling heavy and itchy and wondering if she was bitten by a bug. She's greeted by Qyburn, who stands by her bed and asks if she is finally awake. He asks if she slept well, adding with a smile that he thinks he fell asleep while she was telling the story. Qyburn nervously insists her story was entertaining, but Chiriya looks unconvinced. He then informs her that his mother is calling for her and has something to tell her. Feeling suddenly unwell, Chiriya apologizes and asks a surprised Qyburn if he can help her walk. Looking down from the grand staircase, Chiriya, now dressed up, sees the Duchess meeting with people she recognizes as being from the temple. She realizes the heavy feeling in her body is the divine energy radiating from the temple delegation below. A brown-haired priest asks the Duchess if she truly intends to sever ties with the temple, calling her decision unfortunate. The priest issues an ultimatum. All temple handmaidens will be removed, and Kybran must be sent from the capital by day's end. The Duchess calmly faces the priest and asks if that is all he has to say. The priest calls her arrogant, questioning her lack of pity for the citizens he claims will be sacrificed for her son. With closed eyes, the Duchess responds that while she may not understand, she believes the Empire's god is a merciful one. Whoosh! Enraged by her words, the priest shouts, "How dare you!" Surrounded by a powerful aura, the Duchess coldly tells him to leave, reminding him that he insisted on their departure. From her perch at the top of the stairs, Chariya watches the tense standoff with apprehension. The Duchess's face is cast in shadow as Chariya and Kybran approach her from behind. Chariya addresses the Duchess as Mother, who confirms she was indeed called for. The Duchess announces they will be leaving the capital, possibly forever, and tells them to do whatever they wish before they go. Chariya contemplates the offer but finds that nothing in particular comes to mind. She tentatively requests permission to take a walk through the garden. The Duchess's expression softens as she tells Chariya that one doesn't need permission to walk in their own home. Her words leave Chariya completely stunned and speechless. As the Duchess leads the way with her maids, Chariya and Kybran silently follow behind. Flustered, Chariya realizes the novel completely misled her about the Duchess's character and that she is now truly part of the family. She finds Kybran peeking around a pillar and asks what he's doing. He explains he's memorizing the temple priest's faces. He vows to scold them when he is older, a sentiment that makes Chariya smile and think how admirable he is. With a chillingly sweet smile, Chariya's thoughts turn dark as she declares her intention to kill them. Kybran looks back in alarm, but Chariya quickly tells him that's going too far, determined to keep him from the villain's path. When Kybran questions her, Chariya explains that it would cause a huge problem if he, the young master, killed a priest. Kybran reveals he overheard the priests wishing for his mother's death, sending Chariya into a protective rage over their cruelty. Her expression hardens as she considers that maybe it would be fine, as long as no one discovered Kybran was the culprit. Snapping out of it, Chariya hastily tells Kybran absolutely not, deciding it's a problem for when he's older. Relieved she didn't get swept away by his anger, Chariya changes the subject, asking Kybran for a tour of the garden. Kybran hesitates, asking if Lady Chariya is certain she doesn't want to see her family, which momentarily stops her. Seeing her walking ahead, a happy Kybran agrees to guide her, thinking to himself how adorable she is. As she walks, Chariya suddenly feels strange, finding it odd since she was sure all the temple priests had already left. A wave of dizziness causes her to stumble, and Kybran rushes to catch her as she insists she's fine. Chariya's thoughts spiral as she worries that if her illness is serious, her new in-laws might refuse to accept her. Outside a grand mansion, a desperate voice cries out for Lady Chariya. A beautiful woman with long blonde hair and a brown-haired maid look on in confusion. Startled, Chariya sits up in bed and cries out, "Mother!" to the blonde woman standing over her. She recalls the moment it happened, remembering how she suddenly collapsed in the hallway while with Kybran. Chariya asks about Kybran, and the blonde woman explains she took him to his room after he was startled by the incident. Alone with her thoughts, Chariya remains puzzled about the cause of her sudden collapse. Noticing the concerned look on the blonde woman's face, Chariya fears she has an incurable disease and will be abandoned. Peeking from behind a chair, Chariya watches the woman with growing anxiety. The blonde woman, Winter, chides herself for forgetting other children aren't like Kybran, and resolves to take proper care of Chariya. Winter remarks that she needs a proper nanny like Viscountess Rose, as Chariya listens quietly. A wave of hope washes over Chariya, her eyes sparkling at the thought of being cared for. A woman with short brown hair introduces herself as Elena Lilly, the ducal family's physician, who examined Chariya while she was unconscious. Chariya politely greets Elena, but anxiously asks if there was something wrong with her. Elena delivers a grim diagnosis. Chariya's condition is serious, and she could die within the year, leaving her utterly horrified. A narrator recalls that in the original story, the beautiful but unhappy Chariya was 17 when she was involved in an incident. Winter worries that Chariya is too frail to survive the journey to the duchy and desperately wonders what to do. "Are you really going to leave me behind?" Chariya shouts, vowing that she can endure whatever it takes. Winter instructs Elena to oversee Chariya's recovery until Viscountess Rose arrives, hoping to buy time with someone named Mevelik. Elena worries about Chariya's severe malnutrition, while Winter, her eyes flashing with resolve, considers the inevitable pressure from the temple. Chariya overhears them and realizes with a heavy heart that her poor health is causing trouble and extending their stay. Winter gently reassures Chariya, telling the young guest not to worry so much about the situation. Seeing her looking down, Winter declares it's dinner time and invites a grateful Sharia to join them in the dining hall. Elena excuses herself to check on Kybran first, explaining that she promised to update him on Sharia's condition. As she leaves, Elena adds that she'll ask Kybran about Sharia's food preferences, making Sharia feel completely overlooked. Sharia clutches her dress, a mix of anxiety and sadness welling up inside her. Whoa! Suddenly, a pair of arms sweeps Sharia up from her seat. Cradled gently in Winter's arms, the small girl is carried through a shower of blossoms. Kybran and Elena rush down the hall after them, frantically calling Lady Sharia's name. Tears streaming down his face, Kybran begs Sharia not to go to heaven, much to her bewildered confusion. An adorable chibi illustration shows a sleeping Sharia in Winter's arms as Kybran looks on with a skull and crossbones thought bubble. Elena smiles awkwardly, wondering how her explanation of Sharia's condition led Kybran to believe she was dying. Elena reveals that Kybran overheard their earlier conversation about her grim prognosis, shocking Sharia. As Winter carries her into a grand dining room, Sharia thinks it's impossible for him to have heard. She reasons that Kybran's room is too far away, and the servants would have stopped him from eavesdropping anyway. Pushing the thought aside, Sharia's attention shifts to a more pressing, immediate concern. Seated at the table, Sharia stares in disbelief at the 3 large plates of food set before her, overwhelmed by the sheer amount. She notices that Winter has no intention of stopping her and continues to sip her drink calmly. As she stares at her plate, a sudden, brilliant realization dawns on Sharia. At a lavish dining table, the blonde Duchess smiles as Sharia expresses her delight over the delicious steak. The Duchess tells a content Kybran that he needs to eat well to get better quickly, as a chibi Sharia asks if he'll get even more food. A hand offers Sharia several pills, explaining that she'll need to take medicine for a while. Panicked, Kybran insists Sharia can't go to heaven because there won't be any delicious food there. Promising to try, Sharia takes a sip from her cup, feeling uneasy that everyone is treating her as if she's on borrowed time. Sharia asks if she can visit the garden she missed earlier, and the Duchess surprises her by offering to join for tea time. Later, tucked into bed together, Sharia and Kybran lie awake in thoughtful silence. Sharia recalls walking through the garden with Kybran earlier, and realizing the Duchess had been watching them from a distance the entire time. Lying in bed, she considers that as the mistress of the ducal family, her mother must be incredibly busy. Turning to Kybran, Sharia says that his mother seems to be a very good person after all. She reconsiders her awful first impression, now wondering if the Duchess's cold words were only said because of the temple maids who were watching. Kybran enthusiastically agrees and adds that Lady Sharia is a good person too, which makes her smile as she notes he isn't jealous. His expression saddens as he asks about the Duke, and Sharia falls silent, unsure how to respond. Startled, Sharia looks at Kybran as he suddenly declares that he likes ears. In a hazy flashback, Kybran explains he overheard his mother and someone named Elena saying his condition was a mess, so he tried to repeat a past action. The memory focuses on Kybran's small hand gently holding Sharia's. A close-up of Kybran's face in the memory reveals his pained expression. Kybran confesses that he wants to be helpful to Lady Sharia, but she quickly reassures him that he's already helpful enough. She suddenly realizes he was the one who covered her with a blanket earlier, a gesture that touches her. Eager to do more, Kybran tries to cover her again, but a flustered Sharia insists she'll cover him instead. Overcome with pure joy, Kybran leans on the bed and beams at her, his eyes sparkling. A blushing Sharia looks away, moved by his innocent affection. Kybran promises to get better quickly, gushing that she's so cute he could die, and she happily agrees it's a promise. A small, chibi Sharia in a witch hat appears with a promotional message for the readers. The next morning, Sharia, now with her hair in pigtails, wakes up to find a magnificent dessert platter before her, leaving her speechless. Mara presents the dessert, telling a bewildered Sharia that she must have something to eat. Realizing Kybran is gone, Sharia is stunned to see a table groaning with food as Mara explains she brought everything she could think of. Mara reminds her to take the medicine prescribed by Lady Elena, but Sharia is too horrified by the sheer volume of food to respond. Feeling her appetite vanish, Sharia says she'll eat later, but Mira insists she must eat to regain her strength. Mara presents a large dish of eggs, promising it's just one bite, but Sharia internally scoffs at the generous portion. As Mara urges her to open wide, a reluctant Sharia takes a single, hesitant bite. Mara enthusiastically offers another dish, but Sharia remains silently overwhelmed by the endless meal. Facing yet another last bite, Sharia stares at the food with a grim expression and firmly refuses. Wah! Overwhelmed, Sharia flees the room, apologizing to a shocked Mara, who calls out after her. Tap, tap, tap. She dashes down a grand hallway as Mara's calls of Miss Sharia echo behind her. Whoa. Her escape comes to an abrupt halt as she runs headfirst into someone. Oof, the force of the impact sends a jolt through her. The Duke catches her in his arms, and as she looks up at him, she's surprised to find the usual smell of cigarettes is gone. Mara arrives, breathlessly calling out for Miss Sharia from down the hall. Seeing the Duke holding Sharia, Mara explains that the girl must eat a little more. The Duke looks down at a pouting Sharia, finally understanding the reason for all the commotion. He calmly tells Mara that he has her and dismisses the surprised maid, who reluctantly agrees. As Mara departs, the Duke holds Sharia and thinks an apology to his angel. With a gentle smile, the Duke tells Sharia she doesn't have to eat if she doesn't want to, though she feels guilty knowing Mara was just worried. He carries her away, explaining that forcing herself to eat would only make Mara more worried if she got sick. Now, in a different room, Sharia's attention is caught by an ornate butterfly emblem on a piece of furniture. The camera pans out, revealing a luxurious and sun-drenched study. The Duke breaks the silence, asking with a somber expression if this is his mother's study. He turns to Sharia, his eyes filled with a dark, intense emotion, and asks why Winter gets to be her mother while he remains your grace, shocking her. Realizing this is the Duchess's study, a flustered Sharia worries she's said the wrong thing again, as the Duke observes she just swaps one title for another. The Duke looks at her with a gentle, sunlit smile. As Sharia stares up at him in shock, he clarifies that he was hinting at the A in Appa. Achibi Sharia asks if he meant Agiosi, leaving the Duke speechless as a translator's note explains his likely hint toward dad. As a dark aura envelops the Duke, who is in his 20s, Sharia realizes she's made another mistake. While carrying her, the Duke informs Sharia that he's 3 years younger than Winter, which is news to her. As he continues to speak, Sharia has a sudden look of realization. A door opens to reveal Kybrin sitting alone in a sun-drenched garden, prompting the thought, it's the young lord. Still in the Duke's arms, Sharia asks to go see Kybrin, and the Duke questions if she's not afraid of him. The Duke's expression softens into a warm smile as a sparkle appears on his ear. After being set down, a delighted Sharia thanks the Duke. The Duke stands tall, watching her with a pleased and gentle smile. Tap, tap, tap. Sharia runs off, deciding she'll have to find the right moment to test the waters with Kybrin. She searches the garden for the young lord, calling his name and thinking he must have come this way. She stops, overhearing someone urgently tell another person that they must go and won't be able to see each other for a while. Peeking around a column, Sharia recognizes Kybrin's voice and wonders who he's talking to. She overhears the word food and recalls that Kybrin never told her what he ate in the snake pit before her arrival. Kybrin spots her and calls out her name in surprise. Approaching him, Sharia asks if he was with someone, and he stammers that they just left because they're shy. Looking at a mound of dirt, Sharia wonders if he was talking to an animal, which Kybrin nervously asks if it's strange. Sitting together in the grass, Kybrin cheerfully reassures her that he has plenty of friends in the gardens and forests. His expression falters as he adds that he can't go into the forest anymore, prompting Sharia to ask why. Kybrin explains that he isn't allowed to wander because people are afraid of him, leaving Sharia speechless. Beaming with joy, he tells her it's okay now because he has his mother and her. His expression turns hesitant as he looks at her and begins to ask a question. Sharia stands in the sunlight, realizing she's been faced with a difficult question. Thinking this is a bit of a problem, Sharia looks deeply uncomfortable. She recalls her original family, the manipulative count and countess, her villainous older sister, and the scumbags of Mayall County. Clenching her dress, she realizes with dread that her family was her biggest weakness. A painful memory of her parents demanding she repay them surfaces as she looks down in distress. She worries about how to explain her situation to Kybrin, who waits silently for an answer. In a flustered panic, Sharia waves her hands and blurts out that she hates her family and they don't get along. She explains that she was sold to the duchy because, unlike her saintly sister, there was no other way for her family to profit from her. Kybrin listens silently as Sharia looks away, her explanation hanging in the air. He tells her that's not it, leaving a confused Sharia to wonder what he means. As Sharia tries to explain further, she's interrupted by Mara's frantic call of my lady from a distance. Mara rushes towards them calling for Lady Sharia, who recognizes her maid. Whoosh! Kybrin suddenly grabs Sharia, startling her. In a swirl of pink petals, Kybrin effortlessly lifts a stunned Sharia into his arms. Mara arrives, shocked by Kybrin's surprising strength, while Sharia wonders where a little kid got that kind of power. Mara apologizes to Sharia, admitting she was just too eager to help her get better. Holding Mara's hand, Sharia explains that eating a lot won't speed her recovery and apologizes for running off. Sharia earnestly defends the maid, declaring that Mara didn't do anything wrong to her. Touched by her words, Mara looks down at their joined hands with a gentle, "Oh my." A grateful Mara thanks Sharia, her face glowing with happiness. The magnificent, sun-drenched ducal mansion stands proudly. Glimpses of an opulent and sparkling new room are revealed. Sharia stares in awe at the beautiful, sunlit bedroom prepared for her. Mara asks if she likes it, and a delighted Sharia shouts yes. Sharia pumps her fists in the air, beaming with pure excitement over her wonderful new room. A horrified Mara covers her mouth, suddenly worried about the possibility of cockroaches. Mara realizes with an oops that cockroaches aren't supposed to be in a room, wondering what the Mayal County did to a lovely lady like Sharia. A flustered Sharia thinks she overshared with Mara and tries to downplay her past, but Mara gently addresses her as "my lady." In a warm glow, Mara embraces a surprised Sharia from behind with a comforting smile. Mara beams at Sharia, reassuring her that everything is all right now. In a dark reflection, Sharia realizes she only possessed the original Sharia's body and that the traumatic past she described was all real for her. Overwhelmed by this realization, her eyes fill with sparkling tears. She clutches her chest, overcome with emotion from the borrowed memories. Lying in bed later, she wonders about the strange feeling, realizing Sharia's past and thoughts are starting to feel like her own. A close-up reveals her troubled expression as she grapples with her merging identity. Oof. Deciding to focus on the present, she abruptly sits up in her large, ornate bed. Her attention falls on a small wooden trunk on the floor. Whoosh! She opens the trunk, which emits a faint blue glow. Clink! A large, shimmering gold coin rolls out onto the floor. She picks up the single coin she stole from the county, wondering if it's enough to buy a gift. Holding the coin, she thinks about the kindness she's received from her new family and resolves to repay them. She considers using her future knowledge, but concludes that no one would believe a little kid giving investment tips or warnings of rebellion. With newfound determination, she clenches her fist, ready to act on her plan. Sharia excitedly runs down the hall calling for her mother, and the Duchess, Winter, calmly tells her not to run. Approaching the Duchess, a hesitant but hopeful Sharia begins to ask her a question. Her face lights up with pure, sparkling excitement as she clasps her hands together. The Duchess looks down with a severe expression, questioning Sharia's request considering her condition. After a moment of thoughtful consideration, the Duchess seems to be weighing her decision while a nervous Sharia waits. The Duchess agrees to let her go with a night escort, but only for an hour, sending an overjoyed Sharia running off with a happy promise. In a cute, comical exchange, the Duchess yells, "Don't run." But Sharia happily agrees while continuing to run away. Outside the grand mansion, Sharia waits as an attendant stands by the entrance. Now wearing a lovely sun hat, Sharia looks up with a sweet, curious expression. An elegant golden carriage awaits her, attended by a uniformed knight and a driver. A close-up reveals the handsome, stern-faced knight assigned to escort her. A horse-drawn carriage departs from the ducal estate. Inside the moving carriage, Sharia sits quietly, looking a bit uncertain. She looks at the knight sitting opposite her, recalling that his name is Caesar. Observing Caesar, she notes that he doesn't seem to be a high-ranking knight, which makes sense for an escort mission like hers. As she gazes out the carriage window, her thoughts drift to Kybrin, and she wonders what he's doing. The carriage makes its way through a bright and colorful town. The scene shifts to a bustling outdoor market filled with people. The market is lively with shoppers and vendors going about their day. Wow, Sharia is amazed by the crowd, covering her mouth in wonder at seeing so many people. A look of recognition crosses her face as she thinks about this particular place. A glowing memory of the original Sharia appears, looking wistfully at the same bustling market. The sad memory dissolves into a cascade of pink petals and shimmering bubbles. Back in the present, Sharia points decisively at a vendor's stall, exclaiming that she really wants a specific item. An elderly vendor holds up 2 beaded bracelets, explaining to the little miss that they come as a pair. The vendor insists she must buy both for good luck, and a horrified Sharia internally accuses her of pulling sales tricks on a child. Sharia pauses, looking down at the bracelets with a thoughtful, as she considers the offer. She surprises the vendor by handing over her gold coin and declaring she'll take both bracelets. As the grateful vendor bows, Sharia stands patiently with Caesar waiting beside her. A new beaded bracelet with a small cross charm is placed on someone's wrist. Sharia looks down at her own wrist, blushing as she admires how pretty the bracelet is. Her joy is tempered by a memory of the original Sharia, who wanted the same bracelet but didn't dare ask for it. She questions her happiness, realizing these are another person's memories, and that this feeling of fulfillment shouldn't be hers. Sharia asks the elderly vendor if she made the bracelets, but the woman explains her granddaughter did, as her own eyesight is failing. Whoa. The vendor hands Sharia a surprisingly heavy bag of change. Seeing her struggle, Caesar offers to carry the bag, and a grateful Sharia accepts. Deciding she needs a fancier gift for her in-laws, Sharia tells Caesar they should head to the pricier inner district. Arriving in the more affluent area, she notes the better quality of goods and the abundance of nobles. As nearby nobles whisper, they recognize Caesar's crest and question if he's from the Duke's house. The nobles instantly spot them, wondering what a ducal knight is doing there, while Sharia observes their reactions. Sharia's eyes widen as she has a sudden realization. Her gaze falls upon a cute teddy bear sitting in a shop's display case. She imagines an adorable Kybrin hugging the bear, certain he would love it as a gift. As Sharia asks to buy the doll, the flustered shopkeeper quickly tells her they're closed. She questions why they're closed midday, but the man insists, leaving her to wonder about his strange treatment as her expression darkens. She peeks around the building to see two noble women being welcomed into the very same shop. She realizes the shop is prioritizing high-status guests and fears that at this rate, she'll fail to buy any gifts and be thrown out. With a defeated sigh, she decides they have no choice but to head back. Putting on a brave face, she cheerfully tells a slightly surprised Caesar that it's time to return. As they walk away, she thinks about how she ultimately couldn't buy a single thing in the main district. She looks downcast, wondering if she'll find anything suitable elsewhere. Her attention is suddenly caught by a bustling shop nearby. She enters a bakery with Caesar, thinking that they can at least get snacks here since a busy shop won't be picky about customers. Peering at the pastries, she thinks the mansion's desserts are too healthy and not sweet enough for her taste. She spots a pastry shaped like a bear's head, thinking it's adorable and looks just like Kybran. With Kybran's gift secured, she decides to find something for her in-laws and asks Caesar for the time. Caesar checks his watch and reports it's 1 o'clock, causing Sharia to panic as she realizes her allotted hour is already over. Dejected, she clutches her small purchase, knowing her shopping trip has come to an end. The carriage departs, leaving the town behind. During the quiet ride back to the mansion, Sharia sits opposite Caesar in the sunlit carriage. She thinks about how difficult gift shopping is and doubts another trip would change anything. She muses that to her incredibly wealthy in-laws, any fancy gift she buys would seem ordinary. A vision of sparkling jewels and mountains of gold coins reminds her that the Nectarian dukes are famous for their immense wealth. She has a flash of inspiration, concluding that a meaningful gift is better than an expensive one. Getting his attention, she tentatively speaks to Sir Knight. She asks Caesar if her mother-in-law or the Duke would dislike a gift that she made herself. He reassures her that he thinks it would be fine, and his kind words leave her looking thoughtful and inspired. A beautiful golden hair accessory is displayed as a small, chibi version of Sharia thanks the audience. Back in a grand room, Kybran's face lights up as he excitedly calls out for Lady Sharia. Sharia greets him warmly, confirming that she went outside after he mentions hearing about her trip. Explaining that she had something to buy, she reaches into a bag as a curious Kybran looks on. Ta-da! With a flourish, she presents the cute, bear-shaped bread in a box. She tells Kybran she bought the bread because it's cute, just like him, prompting him to shyly question her compliment. His innocent reaction leaves her slightly flustered. As Kybran's golden eyes sparkle, she hesitantly confirms her statement. She encourages him to try a bite, saying the little bear looks as nibble-worthy as he does, and he picks up his fork. The fork sinks into the soft bread. A sudden, bloody vision of thorny branches flashes through someone's mind. The dark vision continues with what looks like blood dripping onto the ground. As a horrified Kybran thinks he really wants to bite, Sharia internally screams, realizing his interpretation of nibble took a much darker turn than she intended. She reflects on the experience, wondering if the bakery's unusual concept is why it's popular, and realizing she wanted to show him the rotten world. Shaking off the morbid moment, she decides this isn't the time for that and calls to him again. She presents him with another gift, the beautiful, ornate hair accessory. A narrator explains that unlike her sister, Sharia was locked away in an attic where she sits alone in the dark. Her only hobby during her confinement became making intricate knot decorations. In a memory, a young Sharia gives a handmade golden tassel to Kybran, promising a more expensive gift when she's older. His hands gently accept the delicate handmade gift from her. Blushing happily, Kybran insists that he likes her handmade gift just fine. The scene transitions through an image of beautiful pink flowers and flowing ribbons. In a chibi flashback, Kybran dramatically vows to treasure the gift until after he dies, which Sharia finds a bit extreme. Sharia tells Kybran she wouldn't be upset if he only wore it a few times, and threw it away. Kybran recalls his father, the Duke, saying the same thing before sulking for a long time, leading Sharia to realize the Duke is easily offended. Running into a sunlit garden, Sharia calls out to her mother, getting Winter's attention. Winter notes her lateness, and Sharia explains she was giving a gift to the young master. With a knowing smile, Winter asks if Sharia also thought of getting her a gift, and Sharia nervously agrees. Sharia presents 2 simple beaded bracelets, explaining they were all she could afford to buy. She offers them to Winter, promising to get her something better another time. Winter tells her to share them instead, leaving Sharia stunned and confused. As Winter puts on one of the bracelets, she's framed by beautiful yellow flowers, and Sharia thinks she looks stunning. Sharia marvels that the cheap beaded bracelets look like precious jewels on her mother. Sharia happily notes that it looks like they chose matching bracelets, but Winter dismisses the fuss, pointing out they're just different colored beads. The Duke approaches, thinking that affection doesn't work on Winter, who looks up and questions his presence. As the white-haired Duke arrives, Sharia recognizes him, and he asks Winter why she is there. He overhears Sharia explaining that she bought gifts and gave them to her mother. With a hopeful, cat-eared expression, the Duke eagerly asks where his gift is. Sharia recalls her thought that the Duke is handsome but holds long grudges, though a note clarifies this was never actually said aloud. Flustered, Sharia admits to the Duke that she doesn't have a gift for him yet. The Duke's expression darkens with anger as Sharia panics, hastily promising to have his gift ready by tomorrow. Accepting her promise, the Duke turns and walks away, leaving Cheria to her thoughts. Cheria worries that the Duke is now expecting too much and will be even angrier when he receives her handmade gift. Winter remarks that Rick, her pet name for the Duke, seems fond of Cheria and questions her worried expression. Winter reassures the anxious girl, telling her not to feel pressured because Rick will be happy with anything she gives him. She adds that Cheria couldn't possibly buy something better than what they already own, a fact Cheria finds undeniably true. The next day, Cheria holds a new, intricately knotted green tassel she made for the Duke. Looking at her reflection, she hopes the Duke will like the gift she worked on all night. As a knock sounds at her door, she takes a deep breath and hopes her mother was right. A light-haired man, Rick, enters her room surrounded by a golden glow and calls her name. He asks what's wrong, reminding her it's almost breakfast time, as she stammers nervously. She presents the green tassel, explaining it's the gift she promised him yesterday. Rick reaches out and gently takes the handmade gift from her hands. In a cute illustration, a surprised Rick admits he didn't think she would actually prepare something, confusing Cheria. His expression softens into a warm, genuine smile as he thanks her. Cheria is momentarily stunned by his dazzling smile. Overjoyed by his reaction, Cheria beams and tells him not to mention it. That night, Cheria lies wide awake in her large, elegant bed. Sitting up, she admits to herself that she's too restless to sleep. She quietly gets out of bed and walks across the moonlit floor. Standing in the hallway, she wonders if her unease about leaving for the duchy is causing the ache in her chest. Cheria reflects that she's glad to have recovered, recalling Elena's backhanded compliment about her improved health. Wandering down the hall, she notices a figure with long, white hair standing in a distant, brightly lit doorway. The figure is Jo, the white-haired duchess, who stands alone in a moonlit garden under a shower of glowing butterflies. Jo turns her gaze from the garden toward the hallway where Cheria is standing. Cheria approaches Jo in the garden and asks why she's still awake, to which Jo replies she was about to ask the same question. Outside at night, Cheria stares up at a tall, cloaked figure holding a small, glinting object. With tears welling in her eyes, a distraught Cheria thinks of Qyburn. A white-haired woman stands before a grand estate as a voiceover explains Qyburn chose to be confined there once again. Cheria remains outside, listening as a voice describes the duchy as nothing more than a snake's den. The blonde-haired Duchess, Winter, appears before Cheria, questioning if it was right for Qyburn to leave without meeting a certain someone. Cheria looks down, thinking that if Qyburn were to meet the Saintess, he might be cured. As Winter listens silently, Cheria reflects that, as the Saintess's younger sister, she could have used that connection to her advantage. Winter closes her eyes, recalling what Count Miles said when he brought Cheria to them. A flashback shows her attacking the blonde Saintess as Winter's voiceover repeats the accusation, but Cheria internally insists it was self-defense. Winter smiles knowingly, admitting it would be a lie to say Cheria never had such thoughts from the start. Surrounded by a shimmering blue aura, Winter declares that if they were to act like the male household, they would be no different. Winter explains to Cheria that while she considered forcibly bringing the Saintess, Qyburn said it would be useless. She continues, telling a confused Cheria that Qyburn believes a remedy can only heal the same kind of monster. Horrified, Cheria remembers claiming her attack on the Saintess was an accident and realizes Qyburn might have interpreted it much differently. A cartoonish Cheria and a blonde girl express their mutual confusion over Qyburn's meaning. Whoosh! Holding a glowing object, Winter states that collecting monsters is a better option than dealing with the temple. Winter vows that once what's on Qyburn's body is gone, the temple will be finished, and there will be no more scolding or clinging to the Saintess. A memory of a happy ducal family is starkly contrasted with a dark vision from the original story. Qyburn, driven mad, having killed them all. Pulled back to the present, Winter looks down at Cheria with concern, asking if her fever is rising again. Cheria recalls that Winter is a strong woman who has never been afraid to show kindness. Cheria gasps in shock as Winter suddenly kneels before her. Winter looks up at Cheria from her kneeling position, her expression serious. She admits she's surprised, having expected Cheria to ask to be sent to a different family, which leaves Cheria stunned. Looking at the Duchess with pure adoration, Cheria tearfully declares, "I like you, mother." Cheria hugs Winter tightly, calling her the most beautiful person she's ever seen, and Winter remarks that she sounds just like someone named Rick. Winter asks Cheria to keep amusing her once they are at the duchy, and a cheerful Cheria agrees as they approach the grand mansion. The scene transitions to a daytime view of the beautiful and imposing ducal estate. The grand doors swing open to reveal maids preparing for their arrival. The person, a man with long golden brown hair, asks Yelena who the little girl is, and Yelena explains it's Cheria's first time meeting her. Yelena introduces the person as Viscount Rose, Qyburn's former nurse, who rushed to the duchy without sleeping after hearing of his return. As a maid gushes about the delicate lady traveling alone, a skeptical Cheria looks on. A chibi Cheria questions the maid's comment, and the maid reaffirms that the person cares deeply for Qyburn. Cheria thinks that's not what she meant, clearly confused by the description. She turns away. thinking about that person as the scene shifts to a cascade of red roses. A vision of the handsome, long-haired man kneeling beside Kybrin makes Churiya question the phrase delicate lady. A determined chibi Churiya shakes her head, trying to dismiss her confusion. She reminds herself not to be swayed by prejudice or judge someone by their appearance. However, upon seeing the man's distinctly masculine face, she can't help but think he doesn't look like a delicate lady at all. The man, Viscount Rose, approaches and calls out to Yelena. Yelena welcomes Viscount Rose back, and he smiles, saying the duchy is like a second home. Yelena presents Churiya to him, announcing that Viscount Rose will also be taking care of her now. Churiya nervously introduces herself, wondering why Yelena sees this person so differently than she does. Viscount Rose smiles warmly and greets Lady Churiya, but she feels a sense of suspicion about him. His eyes glow an ominous red as he states that he looks forward to being in her care. A cute chibi Churiya, in a witch's hat, thanks the audience for reading. Surrounded by thorny branches, Viscount Rose greets Churiya, who internally notes that a character like him never appeared in the original story. As he smiles down at her, she thinks there's no way such a strikingly handsome man could be a mere extra. Noticing his eye color change, she wonders if he's even human, while Yelena asks him to take care on the way. Viscount Rose gives a confident smile and agrees. Flustered, Churiya wonders why the Duke looks so different in her eyes. Yelena decides she should stay out of sight to avoid suspicion, and tells someone named Yelena she's running to her room. A man with long, golden brown hair and red eyes, Viscountess Rose, smirks while holding a small, jeweled item. Churiya contemplates that she and her new nanny will be together almost all day once they reach the Duke's domain. As the Duke walks away, Churiya wonders what to do now. Kiak! Startled, Churiya yelps as a hand suddenly places a tiny crown on her head. Churiya looks up in surprise at the Duke, who holds a small, ornate box while resting a hand on her head. When Churiya asks why he's there, the Duke explains that Yelena told him where she was, and that he has something to give her. The Duke presents the ornate box to a speechless Churiya, calling it a gift. He explains it's a return gift for the tassel she gave him earlier. He thanks her, but then looks confused, asking about the key that came with the box. Churiya is horrified to learn the key hasn't been made yet and won't arrive until next year, thinking they're kidding her. Quickly forcing a smile, Churiya thanks him and says she's looking forward to next year. The Duke accepts her thanks, and Churiya comically notes his brief hesitation, musing on the perceptiveness of a father-in-law. The Duke remains silent, his expression thoughtful. He tells Churiya to immediately report if she feels unwell during their journey, and she nervously agrees. He explains that warping can cause severe dizziness for someone with her weak constitution. Churiya beams, happily insisting she's much better now and telling him not to worry. In a chibi panel, the Duke looks unimpressed, thinking that asking her to report feeling unwell should be easy enough. The pleasant moment fades as Churiya suddenly clutches herself, looking pale and ill in a cold, dark setting. Inside a carriage, Elena notices Churiya sweating profusely and asks if she's all right. Churiya forces a smile, assuring Elena she's fine and blaming her condition on nerves from her first long carriage ride. The narration notes that Viscountess Rose has been staring intently at her for some time. Churiya is enraged when she catches Viscountess Rose sneering at her. Elena reminds her that the Duchess ordered them to stop if she or Kybrin felt unwell, making Churiya feel cared for. Viscountess Rose suggests he and Kybrin get some fresh air, and an excited Kybrin invites Churiya to join them. As they walk away from the carriage, Churiya tells Kybrin she has something she needs to ask him. She clarifies that her question is specifically about Viscountess Rose. In a panic, Churiya asks Kybrin if he also sees Viscount Rose as a hulking blonde man, and if he saw his eye color change. She internally fumes, wondering why the Viscount keeps staring at her so intensely. Deciding her previous questions were too strange, she simply asks Kybrin who Viscount Rose is. As a strange sound fills the air, a vision shows Viscount Rose weeping dramatically about being helpless. Kybrin asks Churiya if she also sees Viscount Rose as a delicate woman, leaving her stunned as she thinks he looks strong enough to fight a tiger. Kybrin reassures her that things are just awkward for now, and says he believes he and Churiya will get along well. With a small, hopeful smile, Churiya quietly agrees. The scene transitions to the group preparing their carriage, ready to set off for the Duke's domain. As the journey begins, Churiya feels a wave of dizziness and nausea, recalling her father's warning. A voice calls out her name, and she looks up from her seat in the carriage. Viscountess Rose stands before her, framed by an illusion of blooming red flowers. He notes it's her first time warping and kindly advises her to stay seated until the dizziness passes. Surprised by his sudden kindness, Churiya nervously thanks him. Viscountess Rose tells her not to overdo it for a while, his sentence trailing off. He kneels before the carriage, catching her attention as he looks up at her. His hand reaches gently toward her face. He cups her cheek, and the gentle moment is shattered by a dark, thorny background as Churiya stares in shock. A dark, abstract image flashes, showing the silhouette of a menacing adult and a small child. The vision transforms Viscountess Rose into a sinister figure with glowing red eyes and a cruel smile. Chiria looks up at the menacing figure, her eyes wide with terror. The scene shifts to a vast, sunlit bedroom where Kybrin sits alone on a bed. Lying sick in bed, Chiria laments being bedridden for recovery right after arriving at the duchy. She recalls the unsettling closeness of Viscount Rose, thinking that hearing about him only worsened her upset stomach. Thinking she's at least glad she didn't throw up, Chiria is met with a concerned Kybrin asking if she's alright. Reassuring Kybrin that she's better, Chiria attributes her sickness to her first time warping and asks if he felt the same. Looking away flustered, Kybrin admits he was dizzy too, and Chiria notices he can't make eye contact. Watching Kybrin from her bed, Chiria wishes she weren't sick, so she could explore the duchy manor. An ornate, sparkling decoration with a central blue snowflake is displayed against a backdrop of white flowers. The narrative explains the duchy's manor is called the Crescent Moon Castle, and it's surrounded by the New Moon Forest, a place infamous for monsters that subjugation squads are sent to defeat. Lying in bed, Chiria recalls Winter's words about collecting monsters for Kybrin, a memory of the Duchess floating in her mind. She sits up and asks Kybrin if he remembers her telling him that she was a monster too, startling him. Kybrin shushes her, promising to keep her secret, leaving a confused Chiria to wonder what he means. He vows not to tell a single person, earnestly telling Chiria she mustn't get locked up like he was, leaving her stunned. Her eyes widen as she internally processes his unexpectedly serious and protective reaction. In a warm, sunlit moment surrounded by flowers, they continue to hold hands. Deciding she'll embrace being a monster too, Chiria thanks Kybrin with a smile as they hold hands. Kybrin smiles warmly and starts to recall something his old nanny used to say. In a flashback, his nanny, Viscount Rose, tells a younger Kybrin that only a monster can heal another monster. A thoughtful Chiria finally understands, connecting Viscount Rose to the saying and concluding that he must be a monster too. Later, Mira happily notes that Chiria is eating well, much better than she did at the townhouse. Enthusiastically, Chiria agrees, eager to get healthy and explore the duchy, which impresses Mira. She resolves to get healthy quickly so she can be ready to deal with whatever schemes Viscount Rose is planning. As Chiria eats with gusto, Mira relays Yelena's advice that she should start taking short walks today. Crack! Mira suggests a walk around the castle with Viscount Rose, and the idea makes Chiria freeze in horror. Internally screaming, "No way!" a panicked Chiria scrambles to think of an excuse to avoid the walk. Pa! An idea strikes, and she brightly announces she's supposed to see the Duchess right after she finishes eating. When Mira questions this, Chiria nervously insists that the Duchess herself gave her those instructions. As Mira silently doubts the story, Chiria internally confesses that she completely made it up. Her excuse is cut short as she hears something and pauses, thinking, wait a moment, it's the Duchess, Winter, who addresses her as young lady, stating that she's late and has been waiting for her. In a vast office, Chiria internally notes she never agreed to come but apologizes anyway, and Winter invites her to sit down. Seated across from Chiria, the Duchess announces that Kybrin will begin air lessons, so the castle gates will be closed for a while. Winter explains the Emperor asked her to feign concern for the temple's opinion, leaving Chiria wondering why she's sharing this. Winter then blames a fire on the temple's neglect of their location, causing a shocked Chiria to think, huh? Wasn't it me who started that fire? A sepia-toned memory shows her and Kybrin watching the flames from outside the burning building. The Duchess frames the event as a fortunate accident where Chiria saved Kybrin, which allowed her to bring them both home. Isn't that right? Winter asks, locking eyes with the stunned Chiria, who slowly processes this new version of events. The Duchess sits elegantly at her desk, framed by an aura of ethereal blue flowers. Chiria recalls her past self walking toward a shining gate, believing a simple push was all it would have taken. Her memory conjures an image of what could have been, a happy family with Winter, the Duke, and Kybrin united. Back in her office, Winter explains that the Emperor's swift approval expedited everything. Look, the Duchess says, prompting a curious Chiria to lean over the large desk. On the desk is an official document bearing new names, Chiria Estella Nectarian and Kybrin Basilios Nectarian. She's adopted. The Duchess smiles knowingly, asking if Chiria really planned on being called young lady forever. Holding the document close, Chiria is declared Kybrin's wife and the new young Duchess. Winter clarifies that while the paperwork is done, the wedding will wait until adulthood, as a simple, inexpensive ceremony for minors is unacceptable. A single tear forms in her eye, reflecting the overwhelming weight of the moment. As the Duchess asks for her understanding, Chiria can only stare down at the document in stunned silence. Chiria quietly asks if this is because of Count Mayol, catching the Duchess off guard. She questions the urgency of the name change, recalling that a certain dangerous man disliked her connection to the male name. A dark vision flashes through her mind, a shadowy man with a sword towering over a white-haired woman. With her eyes closed, Winter calmly asks if what Chiria said is right. Chiria looks up at her mother and firmly states that she acted of her own free will. Seated before Winter, Chiria asserts that her actions were her own decision and choice. Chiria offers a warm, genuine smile to her mother. Visibly moved, Winter tears up while remembering a happy, smiling young Kybrin. Winter dismisses Chiria's heartfelt explanation, claiming she doesn't understand and was just being truthful. Standing up, Winter announces she has something to do and turns to leave as Chiria looks on. The narration reveals Winter is going to see Viscountess Rose, and Chiria is horrified at the thought of meeting him again. Panicked, Chiria grabs Winter's sleeve, begging to come along and promising to be quiet, as she desperately wants to avoid Viscountess Rose. With sparkling eyes, Chiria admits the place is unfamiliar, but thinks she feels safe by her mother's side. Chiria pleads to postpone meeting Viscountess Rose until she's healthier, worried about what he might do, and Winter considers her request. A small smile appears on Winter's face as she repeats Chiria's words about feeling safe with her. Winter agrees to let her come but insists on silence, and an ecstatic Chiria clenches her fists and enthusiastically agrees. In a formal meeting, a man reports that frequent monster attacks necessitate additional troop support, even suggesting the Duke should personally intervene. He explains that powerful monsters are a good source of valuable red magic stones, which are superior to those made by mages and have many uses. A pouch bursting with glittering gold coins illustrates the immense profit to be made. Listening to the meeting, Chiria begins to nod off in her chair. Chiria sleepily thinks that, while the discussion is interesting, she's fighting to stay awake, blaming the lingering side effects of warping. Winter glances over with a sharp, concerned look at the drowsy girl. The scene blurs as Chiria finally drifts off to sleep next to her mother at the meeting table. Slumped over in her chair, a half-asleep Chiria lets out a confused, "Huh?" The Duke, Rick, now sits beside her, looking down with a gentle, warm smile. Chiria wakes up to see the Duke, who apologizes for waking her while trying to be quiet. She looks down in surprise, noticing a white robe draped over her shoulders. Recognizing the garment's pleasant scent, she realizes it belongs to her mother. Touched by the kind gesture, Chiria happily thinks Winter is the best as the Duke walks away in the background. The Duke's hand gently places a large red bow on Chiria's head, presenting it as a gift. Adjusting the new bow, Chiria asks the Duke where he has been. He casually replies that he was out having fun, which sends Chiria into a silent rage. Thinking of her mother working hard, the Duke encourages Chiria to explore the castle, which has more to see than the townhouse, but she seems hesitant. When Chiria asks if it's okay to wander alone, the Duke assures her it is, but humorously warns her to avoid Viscountess Rose. Pausing his writing, the Duke tells Chiria to wait a second, piquing her curiosity. Chiria watches with a questioning look as the Duke continues writing something at his desk. He hands her a simple, hand-drawn map of the estate to prevent her from getting lost, showing the locations for Kybrin's lessons and artifact storage. He points to a section of the map, explaining it's the room where Kybrin has his lessons. He then indicates another area on the map, identifying it as the artifact storage room. In a cute aside, he adds that there's also an exhibition hall full of expensive things he thinks she'll like, making Chiria wonder if her love of money is too obvious. Chiria accepts the map and thanks him before setting off to explore. She turns and pushes open the large, ornate door to leave the room. With the map in hand, Chiria walks down a bright, sunlit hallway. Consulting the map, she decides her first destination will be Kybrin's lesson room. Annoyed, Chiria thinks about the classic romance fantasy trope of an abusive home tutor, comically imagining Kybrin getting hit by a shadowy figure. Arriving at a grand door, she wonders if this is the place, and resolves to tell her mother if she finds anything amiss. Peeking into the room, she overhears a man's voice expressing his gratitude. The man explains that someone named Nina recovered thanks to medicinal herbs recommended by the young master, leaving Chiria to wonder who Nina is. The man adds that Nina came to him on her own, leading Chiria to realize Nina is likely an animal, not a person. Chiria pauses in the doorway, pondering what she's just heard. "Kaya!" Startled, she yelps as Kybrin suddenly appears and grabs her collar. Remembering Kybrin's sharp hearing, Chiria internally panics, insisting she wasn't eavesdropping with malicious intent. The man from inside the room looks down at Chiria and identifies her as the young lord's fiancé, leaving her stunned. A voice compliments someone, remarking that she is just as lovely as they had heard. A smiling man with neatly styled dark hair and a formal suit greets Chiria warmly. Up close, he introduces himself as Baron Daniel Dawson, Kybrin's new history tutor. Chiria introduces herself and thinks the Baron seems kind, but her thoughts trail off in confusion. Her confusion stems from noticing the Baron's tattered and worn-out clothes and shoes. In a moment of shocking realization, Chiria imagines Kybrin attacking the Baron and concludes he's the one being abused. Dismissing the absurd thought, she wonders why a Baron would look so shabby, glancing at him and Kybrin. She internally speculates if gambling or loan sharks are the cause of his disheveled appearance. "Eek," Chiria gasps as Viscount Rose appears, sternly telling the Baron to step aside. As Viscount Rose glares, a chibi Chiria looks on with extreme annoyance. Thump! Viscount Rose, takes a seat at the head of the table, his face hidden in shadow. He gives Chiria a menacing look, and she internally challenges him, refusing to show fear. Baron Dawson announces his departure, now that Viscountess Rose has arrived to supervise the children. The Baron offers a polite farewell to Chiria, who gives a small, distracted acknowledgement. Qyburn nervously invites Chiria to sit with him, mentioning they still have time before the next lesson. Looking away sadly, Qyburn mentions that Nina is a very large leopard. He explains that the Baron told him Nina, who was near death, has recovered due to her strong will to live. Qyburn expresses his sadness, saying he wishes he could have seen her healthy too. Realizing he can't go outside, Chiria feels a pang of sympathy, recalling that he is still confined. She remembers how he used to talk to animals at the townhouse and wonders if he was friends with Nina too. Qyburn looks up, surprised by her attentive silence. Chiria brightly offers to visit Nina for him, which delights Qyburn, but Viscount Rose coolly states he will also go. Leaping to her feet, Chiria angrily confronts Viscount Rose, accusing him of being jealous. Viscount Rose smirks, thinking Chiria is the jealous one, unable to stand him gaining Qyburn's favor. Sensing the tension, Qyburn sweetly offers Chiria a cookie from a small pouch. Taking the cookie, Chiria internally questions if Viscount Rose would really follow them. She bites into the cookie, reassuring herself that with an escort present, he wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Still, she eyes him warily as he sits with his arms crossed, an unreadable expression on his face. Chiria confronts Viscount Rose directly, asking if he has something to say and if he plans to gossip about Qyburn. With a sudden, sharp movement, Viscount Rose rises from his chair. Without a word, he turns and leaves the room, shutting the door behind him. Thump! Chiria is left stunned, questioning why Viscountess Rose was even there, and Qyburn suggests she came to check on him. As snow falls outside, the narrative notes that winter arrives much faster in the duchy than in the capital. Noticing Qyburn's flushed cheeks, Chiria asks if he gets cold easily. He shyly nods yes, and Chiria's thought bubble declares him so cute. Qyburn admits the cold makes him sleepy, and Chiria teasingly compares him to a snake. Chiria laughs with pure delight, surrounded by an illusion of white flowers. She tells a surprised Qyburn that she thinks she's a cute monster and is happy to be one with him around. A soft, warm blush spreads across Qyburn's face as he smiles gently. Chiria mirrors his expression, her own face flushed with a happy, contented smile. The scene shifts to Winter, asking Qyburn about his lesson with the Baron as they look at a book together. Whoosh! The pages of the book seem to glow with importance. The camera focuses on the elegant script written within the book. A close-up shows Chiria's eye widening in shock at what she sees. As Chiria stares, a comparison highlights two distinct handwriting styles, Mevelric's font and Qyburn's font. Chiria realizes Qyburn's handwriting is identical to his mother's, a detail that seems to trouble her. Qyburn explains that the room used to contain many stone tablets, piquing Chiria's curiosity. He adds that while the tablets aren't fun, they are valuable, making Chiria wonder what makes them so important to him. An idea forms. They should go check it out. Knock knock. Chiria approaches a door and asks Qyburn if they can go inside. Qyburn announces that it's time for his next lesson, bringing their time together to an end for now. Holding a letter, Chiria cheerfully says she'll head out then, and Qyburn agrees. She leaves the room, walking down a stone staircase into a brightly lit hall. Arriving at a grand, unguarded library, Chiria wonders at the lax security before cautiously calling out. Her eyes land on two large stone tablets, covered in dense script, propped against a desk. She walks further into the ornate, purple-hued room, drawn toward the mysterious tablets. Looking closer at the strange writing, she wonders if it's some kind of code listing dislikes for messy handling and lies. A voice from behind her asks if she's here to look around, startling a tiny, chibi Chiria. A well-dressed man with gray-blue hair and glasses appears, bathed in a celestial light as he introduces himself as the manager of the artifact storage room. Chiria introduces herself, and the man notes that she reminds him of someone. He smiles, telling her to call him Emil, and asks if she's found anything interesting. Chiria directs his attention to the stone tablets, and he nonchalantly identifies them. With a friendly smile, Emil explains that the writing isn't ancient script. She stares in utter shock as she reads the text on the tablets, which lists personal preferences like likes glasses and dislikes lies. In a moment of profound confusion, she wonders why she can read the text just fine. Emil tells her to forget the tablets and check out something more fun, turning to walk away. He presents her with a jewelry box containing a beautiful, sparkling bracelet, explaining it's an artifact. In a cute flashback, Emil recalls the Duke giving him the bracelet, explaining it's supposed to spread happiness to others. He offers to show her around, but as Chiria agrees, her gaze is drawn back to the glowing stone tablets, a sense of unease on her face. She realizes with a jolt that if the writing isn't ancient script, then no one else can read them. Back in the study, Qyburn bashfully hints that they can read the tablets because they're that, leaving a baffled Chiria covered in question marks. As they sit together, Chiria asks if he means they're monsters and if he can read the tablets too, to which he stammers yes. She touches her cheek, admitting she's just a fake monster, and wonders if the writing belongs to those things. Kybran says he doesn't know, but the fact that she can also read it leaves Chiriya in silent contemplation. She considers that while Kybran being a genius in the original story makes sense, it doesn't explain why she, a transmigrator, would be able to read the mysterious script on the tablets. A new thought strikes her, bringing a look of contemplation to her face. Could the reason she can read it be because she's a transmigrator? With a bright, closed-eye smile, Chiriya tells Kybran she's relieved he can see it too, admitting she first thought something was wrong with her eyes. Kybran shyly agrees that he felt the same, glancing at Chiriya from the couch. He imagines a happy, older Chiriya playing with him in a sunlit field, his heart clearly filled with warmth for her. Beaming with pure joy, Kybran is surrounded by an aura of sparkling white and green flowers. Chiriya remains silent for a moment, processing his happiness. With a huge, joyful smile, she exclaims that she's glad to hear that. A chibi Kybran announces that his lessons are over for the day and suggests they go to dinner. From her seat, a tiny Chiriya happily agrees. 2 days later, a carriage travels through a sunlit forest. As Chiriya explains, she's heading to the barony with Viscountess Rose. Inside the carriage, Chiriya notes with some surprise that it's just the two of them, without even a knight for protection. The scene transitions with a gentle, leafy motif. Inside the carriage, Chiriya questions why Viscount Rose is acting as her bodyguard, to which he cryptically replies the Duke and Duchess approved, making her realize they know he's more than a simple nanny. Holding the gift box, she processes this new information, concluding that her in-laws must know Viscount Rose isn't ordinary. As they arrive, Kybran tells Chiriya not to worry too much before she steps out of the carriage. He tries to reassure her, calling Rose not that bad of a kid, which confuses Chiriya, who questions both the term kid and Rose's real name. Kybran brightly explains that Rose was given her name by her adoptive mother and was told to behave and not cause trouble. Back in the carriage, Chiriya decides to trust Kybran's word for now, though she recalls Viscount Rose telling her to get lost. With a brilliant smile, Chiriya decides she'll just have to count on him for the day, much to a surprised Viscount Rose's confusion. Squeak! The carriage wheel turns as they continue their journey. The carriage door opens as a voice announces their arrival at the Dawson barony. Tap tap. Chiriya steps down from the carriage onto the grounds of the barony. She looks around at the desolate, cracked ground and gasps in shock at the poor state of the property. Looking at a surprisingly humble wooden house, Chiriya thinks it's unimpressive, but Viscount Rose's comment that a fortune was spent on it leaves her baffled. Her eyes fall upon a large, bandaged leopard in a cage, and she immediately understands that this must be Nina. With a mighty yawn, Nina opens her jaws wide, showing off a menacing set of sharp teeth. Holding her gift, Chiriya reflects that the Baron must truly love animals to devote so much to the leopard, despite his own shabby state. Viscount Rose abruptly turns to leave, telling Chiriya they've seen enough. Much to her confusion, Chiriya insists they should at least deliver their housewarming gift, but Viscount Rose questions if she really wants to enter such a rundown house. She stands firm, stating she doesn't mind because this is all for Kybran's sake, and he would appreciate the effort. Chiriya coolly tells Viscount Rose he is free to head back to the carriage alone, leaving him momentarily silent. Resigned, Viscount Rose follows along as Chiriya walks purposefully toward the simple residence. Chiriya presents the gift, a box of fine tea leaves, and Baron Dawson's voice graciously thanks her. Inside, Baron Dawson says he'll prepare tea and asks them to wait, which Chiriya readily agrees to as they take a seat. From a distance, Chiriya and Viscount Rose are seen sitting together on a modest sofa, waiting patiently by the fireplace. Viscount Rose leans in to whisper, asking if she's really going to drink the tea, and Chiriya notes his sudden lack of formality. Deciding to match his casual tone, Chiriya resolves to stay for at least one cup, confident in the quality of the tea. Viscount Rose reminds her to be a polite guest for Kybran, but adds that he keeps hearing a strange noise from the ceiling. With a look of disgust, Chiriya worries about rats and internally fumes that Viscount Rose is acting more like royalty than she is. Baron Dawson returns with a welcoming smile, carrying a tray with a teapot and cups as he apologizes for the delay. He places the steaming tea on the table, warning them it's hot, and a grateful chibi Chiriya thanks him. Noting Nina's bandages, Chiriya asks how the leopard was hurt, and Baron Dawson explains she was attacked by a magical beast. In a flashback, he reveals that Nina, severely injured, managed to find her way to him, likely remembering his scent from when he helped birth her. He recalls his feeling of hopelessness, believing at the time that her condition was beyond saving. A brief memory shows a younger Kybran bringing supplies to Baron Dawson in his workshop. Another flashback shows the Baron watching over the heavily bandaged Nina as she rests in her cage. With a proud and happy expression, Baron Dawson reveals it was Kybran who brought the medicine and nursed Nina back from the brink of death. As the Baron expresses his relief that Nina will recover, Viscount Rose remains silent and pensive. What? Chiriya spits her tea in shock, pointing out how strange it is, since magical beasts are known to prefer hunting people. Viscount Rose dismisses her worries about the ducal family's security, but Chiriya eyes him warily, privately wondering if he's the real beast. Baron Dawson beams with pride as he explains that Kybron has a special connection with most animals, not just Nina. When the Baron predicts Kybron will be an excellent head of the family, Viscount Rose looks away, muttering that he's not so sure. Bang! Suddenly, furious pounding echoes from the front door as a voice shouts for Daniel to open up. Baron Dawson stands, excusing himself to answer the door for what he assumes is a friend who's dropped by. A brown-haired man bursts in, excitedly telling Baron Dawson, whom he calls Dewey, that he caught something rarer than the leopard. Intrigued, Chiria wonders what creature could be rarer than Nina, as the man mentions it's a rabbit with unusually colored fur. Whoa! In a flash, Viscount Rose's eyes glow red as he yanks Chiria back with a look of sheer panic. Shielding her, he angrily berates her, asking if she's an idiot for not recognizing that the creature is a magical beast. Her eyes widen in horror as she stares at the seemingly innocent, two-toned rabbit and realizes it's the kind that preys on humans. A sinister, bloody aura emanates from the caged rabbit, confirming its deadly nature. A promotional page displays information and artwork for several other series.